All right, fellow fact checkers. Now, before we start the show, I want to remind you to head over and check out our great sponsor, Fox and Son Coffee. They've got an amazing deal with all kinds of blends going on. So head over there and check it out. You can get the Mexican honey prep, the Brazilian honey prep, the Guatemalan, the Ethiopian. They'll be adding new roasts regularly. So be sure to check in and see what new flavors Steve has got over at Fox and Sons Coffee. They've also got all of your usual favorites, the Den Blend Dark, the Den Blend Light, and the one that we personally like around the house since we can't seem to agree on which of the light or the dark is better for both me and the wife, the Den Blend 2 Electric Boogaloo, which is the medium roast. So be sure to use the checkout code FCT for Fact Check This at checkout, and that'll get you an 18% discount on any order of $25 or more. Also, any order of $37.99 or more get you free shipping. Load up on all the greatest coffee on the market, and you can thank me later. Well, let's start the show.
This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
All right, Fact Check This podcast, and I'm going to try something a little bit different for the next couple episodes to kind of round out the year. I'm going to pre-record and then upload and see how that does engagement-wise. So what I've noticed on YouTube especially is the live videos don't get a lot of engagement. Like basically whatever they get from the people who are watching as it's being done, and then it drops off to nothing after that. But the stuff that I pre-record or post later on usually gets a lot better numbers. So I'm going to try messing with that. Also, after the first of the year, I'm going to start live streaming stuff on Twitter or X. I'll start doing all of my daily stuff there. And it'll probably be live on X, Rumble, and Facebook, and then uploaded to YouTube after the fact. It's just based on engagement and the way that the numbers look. That's the way to do it to get the most eyeballs on stuff. So for those of you who usually watch live stuff, the live stuff that I do on YouTube, I'll be moving the live stuff to X after the first of the year. So you can find it over there and comment and everything, same as you could here, or Rumble or Facebook, But anyway, that's the little announcement section. As the title for today says, the Democrats left reeling. So there's a couple different articles. One of them that came out about a week after the election, and the other one came out about 2.5 weeks or so after the election. Of number one, a blame game, and number two, some actual, possibly insightful look at what went wrong for the Democrats and specifically for Kamala Harris in this last election. So let's jump into the first one, which I thought was pretty interesting. And this is from the Daily Beast. Harris allies say campaign was broken since the beginning in the latest round of blame game. The latest batch of anonymous disgruntled Democrats to speak out blame Biden, Obama, campaign veterans with outdated 2008 mindset, and the city of Wilmington, Delaware. That's blaming a whole ass city. That's always fun. The sun rises, the songbirds sing, and another cadre of anonymous Democratic operatives blames their campaign loss on somebody else. It's a normal daily part of nature at this point, nearly a week out from Vice President Kamala Harris's loss to President-elect Donald Trump. The latest gripers are a dozen disgruntled Harris campaign staff who complained to nonprofit news site Notice that they were left by President Joe Biden, who dropped out of the race in July, with an organizational apparatus that was broken since the beginning. While nearly all acknowledged the biggest factor that led to the Democratic nominee getting routed by Trump was an electorate upset with post-pandemic inflation that few, if any, could have overcome, they proceeded with recriminations that naturally pointed everywhere but at themselves. The sources who spoke to Notice reiterated the prevailing line: Biden stayed in the race too long and shouldn't have run again. Moreover, they claimed that he asked Harris to take care of his people when he finally did back out of the race. That meant hanging on to campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon and her deputy Rod Flaherty, who the anonymous Dems said micromanagers too focused on analytics, often to the point where important organizational needs were neglected. In one example, they said the Biden holdovers had built up an infrastructure that wasn't ready for the enthusiasm Harris's ascendance would bring to the campaign. An enthusiasm that wasn't ready for an infrastructure that wasn't ready for the enthusiasm. Enthusiasm for Kamala Harris is not something that has ever existed, ever, period. Sorry. She was literally the least popular had the lowest approval ratings of any vice president since they started keeping up with that. Like, enthusiasm is not the right word for Kamala Harris. They pumped it up and acted like there was a lot of enthusiasm early on, but within a couple weeks, really, I mean, after the DNC, where was that joy? Where was that enthusiasm? Like, you could see it waning quickly, and especially the more interviews she did, the more she was on screen talking, the worse and worse and worse it got. Like, what enthusiasm? Apparently, online donors who gave through fundraising platform ActBlue weren't prompted with a volunteer registration form to capture Democratic interest. On the day Harris officially entered the race, this meant the initial surge of donors weren't prompted to sign up to help. Though a link to a volunteer form was added hours later, a notice reported captured 170,000 volunteers that day. Volunteers didn't have talking points or literature until late in the campaign. Over 1.5 million lawn signs weren't printed until October, and state organizations didn't start meeting their voter contact goals until 5 weeks out from the election. Biden's team also apparently signed up for too many pricey TV spots and consultant contracts, which left the Harris operation, despite its record cash hauls, short of fundraising goals. Yeah, brought in $1.5 billion for the campaign, and somehow still ended up $20 million short of being able to pay all of their bills, and staffers were left at the end of it wondering if they were even going to get their final paychecks. Like, yeah. And honestly, is it any surprise that this came from the Biden team? Like, if this was carryover from the Biden team, that they had that Biden had signed up all these like pricey TV spots and consultants contracts and all of this stuff, like, would that surprise anybody? Like, this is the dude that was at the head of the administration that ran up all this record inflation and everything else. Like, I mean, did you see Biden's like economic policy and his domestic policy and like everything that he wanted to do? I mean, it was like tax and spend, except that like overspend even beyond what you're taxing. Like, it's insane. It would make the Keynesians proud. We can't lie to people. It confused Harris. Told aides at one point, according to one source who spoke to Notice, when she was given a campaign script that said, "We missed our fundraising deadline." They had to explain to her that they had missed their goals despite the gargantuan war chest. Another point of contention was the city of Wilmington, Delaware, where Biden had headquartered the campaign Harris inherited. No one wants to move to Delaware, some of the Notice sources claimed, leaving the head filled with inexperienced staff who claimed they weren't up to the job. Harris herself tapped a bunch of campaign gurus to help former President Barack Obama win in 2008 and 2020. Harris herself tapped a bunch of campaign gurus who helped former President Obama win in 2008 and 2012, namely David Plouffe, but the Dems said they were just as myopic as O'Malley Dillon, another Obama alum. There was no one who had a different viewpoint, and anybody who had a different viewpoint was always sidelined. Plouffe, they said, focused too much on white suburbanites and moderates who didn't break for Trump. That led to events like Harris holding town halls with former Republican Representative Liz Cheney and touting the endorsement of her neocon father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, a man who proudly bragged about greenlighting acts of torture and was a key architect of the disastrous Iraq War that killed hundreds of thousands. When Harris brought her brother-in-law, Tony West, not an Obama alum, as a key advisor, O'Malley Dillon was initially warm to him. Then she allegedly tried to cut him out of the loop by choosing his chief of staff and sending him around the country as a surrogate away from the campaign brain trust. On the other hand, The Atlantic reported in one of its own surveys of finger pointing amongst Democrats that West, a well-heeled Uber executive, is the one who told Harris to stop campaigning against the Wall Street elites and big business that reaped a massive windfall from the inflation nightmare dogging everyday Americans. In another case, where this latest act of Democratic blame game doesn't quite hold up to scrutiny, senior allies to Harris claimed to notice that they tried to get the DNC to have a Palestinian speaker at the party's August convention. That would have been a sign of goodwill towards Arab Americans concerned about tens of thousands of Palestinians, including 17,000 children killed in the war in Gaza. But the claim beggars belief, since Harris had months afterwards to create daylight between herself and Biden on Gaza or any other issue. And it didn't. And I mean, that's the one thing, a big thing about this campaign is they kept talking about, well, I'm not Joe Biden, but then, well, what would you do different than Joe Biden? Well, I can't really think of anything. Like that, you're shooting yourself in the foot over and over again. Like, I think it was interesting, getting Kamala Harris to stop campaigning against the Wall Street elites. Like, it was amazing how early on in the campaign, in her campaign, she was talking about how terrible these billionaires are. And then when you look at the donations, all of her donations were coming from billionaires. More billionaires were backing Kamala Harris. It's like, you might be saying it, but that doesn't make it true. And also, I think that's another thing that might have tipped people, was just hypocrisy at every fucking turn along the entire campaign. Even in friendly interviews such as on The View, where she was offered the explicit opportunity to state what would be different from her administration and Biden's, she stayed mum. This is like the blame game coming out of the Kamala Harris camp and the Democrat camp after the election is pretty impressive. The way they have spun this out to everything other than you pick the least likable person on the planet. Like, she tried to run for president in 2020 and was the first candidate to drop out. Didn't even make it all the way to 2020. She dropped out in late November of 2019. Like, and that was in spite of an over-the-top push by the DNC to make her the darling on the stage for those early debates. And then she just floundered. Like, they were really trying to prop her up as like the next presidential candidate. And her campaign just fell apart. And anybody who was like paying attention to that, I said it at the time. That's when, whenever she dropped out and it became clear that it was probably going to be Joe Biden, they're going to put Kamala Harris in as his VP because they have shown that they want her to be the next face of the party. Whether anybody else wants it, they don't care. And that's another thing that you get out of this is the Democrats don't understand the American populace, and they don't care to. They're only interested in what they want to do, what the agenda that they want to push. I had an interesting conversation. I troll some leftist subreddits and also engage in a lot of video game related stuff on Reddit. But there is a subreddit called Lavender, I believe it is. It's more right wing leaning. See if I can find it right quick. Yeah, it's Lavader is what it's called. LAVADER_. So the Reddit name of the Reddit sub. It's more right leaning. It's been kind of taking Reddit by storm since the election. Been a lot of people have been a lot of leftists have been showing up on it, complaining because they're seeing it in their feed. Like Reddit has the Reddit algorithm has been pushing it into normal people's feeds who wouldn't be seeing it otherwise. And so it's pissing off a lot of lefties, but also it's putting a lot of eyeballs on right-wing talking points. And so I got a message from a guy the other day that was asking me about conservatism and my views and opinions on a lot of the stuff. And as he and I got to talking, he is I would say borderline socialist based on the things that he really values and thinks are important and would want to see emphasized in an administration. But ultimately, he voted for Trump, and his whole family voted for Trump. And this is like a Southern black guy that, like, they all voted for Trump because the Democrats have so lost touch with average voters and what they act like. We chatted for a couple hours, and it was incredible to get some good back and forth like that, and also to like understand like a true leftist mindset, like the people who are supposed to be the Democrats' unwavering base, who voted for Trump because the Democrats have so lost touch with that base. But they don't understand it. They can't see it, which kind of leads into the second article. This one's from Politico. The anti-Trump movement is in tatters, and now it's scrambling to remain relevant. They spent so much, and this is something that me and the guy on Reddit talked about, like they spent so much time talking about Trump, orange man bad. Like Trump is a Nazi, Trump's a fascist, Trump's a racist, all of this stuff, that a lot of their base just tuned it out. Like you can only say it so many times before it's like, yeah, I know, but I got bills to pay. So if he's a Nazi, racist, fascist, whatever, you're not giving me any solutions to my problems. So, I'll roll the dice with that guy because at least, I might be able to afford to buy fucking groceries. Fascist, Nazi, literally Hitler, and affordable groceries, or save democracy and starve to death. God, it's a hard decision to make, right? And that's that's a conversation that me and the guy were having on Reddit the other night. It was like the Democrats pushed the anti-Trump stuff so much, and that also could go back to the the campaign failures. Like Joe Biden's campaign didn't have a lot to run on substance-wise, as in terms of like, okay, they got the jobs numbers and stuff that they could have run with, except that the problem is the jobs numbers came out to be bullshit. Like I think it was right before the Trump Biden debate was when the jobs report came out that said that all of these like massive job gains that they had reported over the course of the last year, actually it was 100 million, or not 100, over 1 million jobs less than what they had reported. Like, so all of these already like pedestrian numbers that had been adjusted down over and over again. Then it was revealed that even after all of those downward adjustments, there was still 1 million over-reported jobs. So, like, before they even had a chance to hit the debate stage, Biden's entire, like, economic growth thing just got shot in the fucking head. So, the only thing they had to run on was Trump's a felon. Trump's, Nazi, Hitler, fascist, racist, misogynist, stealing women's rights. I still haven't been told what rights women are losing by Trump taking office, but like that's all they had to run on was Trump. Nothing for their own. And so that leaves them in tatters, as this says. Donald Trump's victory splintered the already fractured Never Trump movement into shards and further boxed out his MAGA outcast, leaving some of his most prominent Republican critics scrambling for relevance in the reordered GOP. In recent days, former UN ambassador Nikki Haley ripped into two of the president-elect's top appointees, Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., on her radio show. Former Virginia Representative Barbara Comstock skewered Trump's nominees as a cabinet of Putinists and pedophiles, and And former Vice President Mike Pence attempted to rally anti-abortion conservatives against Kennedy as Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary. Nikki Haley and Mike Pence. Anybody that they oppose, anybody that they talk badly of, assume that that's probably a good candidate, and you should definitely be in support of them. And the reason, and like, Pence was an establishment pick for VP the first time around. And after it became clear that he was not actually, or that he was, a rhino and not a Trump loyalist, there was no way he was ever going to have anything to do with this administration. Nikki Haley will never have anything to do with this administration. She has proven herself to be a Trump enemy for months, if not years. These people are not, they're going to be on the outside looking in forever. And the only way that they can maintain relevance or get any semblance of relevance back is to try to appease to the TDS left, because right wingers don't care what they have to say anymore. They are done. They're out. But they're screaming their words of caution from the sidelines as Trump, already having overhauled their party, forges ahead with remaking Washington in his MAGA image. And he is doing so with the backing of broadly supportive congressional Republicans who have little political incentive to listen to his detractors. The Never Trumpers and Lincoln Project folks just need to climb back under their rocks for a few years, said Scott Reed, the veteran GOP strategist and leader of the pro-Pence Committed to America PAC. Trump's convincing win allowed the president-elect to quickly consolidate power within his party as he prepares to return to Washington. And it has scattered the remnants of the Republican resistance to him back to their respective corners to regroup. Some, like Haley and Pence, who criticize their former boss on some issues but remain aligned with him on others, still believe they can change a GOP that has near fully bent its knee to Trump. Remember, this is Politico, so they write everything from a severely left tilt and use barbed language like bending the knee to Trump. The nice thing is, Haley and Pence, while they may believe they can change a GOP that's bent its knee to Trump, they're wrong. They are being summarily rejected at every level. But others, particularly those among the pillars of the original Never Trump movement, who were long ago pushed aside by their party or left it of their own volition, have given up trying to resurrect republicanism as they knew it. Joe Walsh, a former GOP congressman and prominent Trump critic who challenged him for the party's nomination in 2020 before becoming an independent, said the former president's reelection has taken reforming the Republican Party off the table. He also believes it has dimmed the prospects for disaffected Republicans to form a new party. It's down to two options, Walsh said in an interview: productively throw rocks at the administration, be like a group in exile, and from a distance do what we can to damage MAGA, knowing we can never go back, or become Democrats. I would recommend that you become Democrats because you always were fucking Democrats, you spineless piece of shit. Fuck Joe Walsh. No. Personal note. Trump's GOP skeptics broadly appear to be starting with the former, seizing on his cabinet selection process as a way to continue challenging his MAGA agenda and to restart their own political relevance. Haley, a more traditional foreign policy hawk, has recently used her radio to assail foreign policy views, criticizing the former Democratic Congresswoman as a Russian, Iranian, Syrian, Chinese sympathizer. She also attacked Kennedy as a liberal Democrat who has no background in healthcare. Nikki Haley herself is a liberal Democrat. And it's funny that on her radio show, like anybody listens to fucking Nikki Haley's radio show. Well, I would like to see the audience number for Nikki Haley's radio show. That would be fucking hilarious. And then compare that to, say, Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan or just a random Antonio Brown stream on X. Like what's Nikki Haley's audience actually look like? People in South Carolina don't even like her home state. She reiterated those serious concerns in an email to her political supporter list on Tuesday, promoting her radio show, in which she also shared a survey soliciting top priorities for the Republican governing trifecta in Washington. Trump, however, has made clear that Haley, his most significant GOP primary rival, who later embraced his candidacy, will not be invited back for his second term. And let's see. I need to find the statement because the statement was fucking hilarious the way he wrote it. All right, here it is. Damn it. I thought this had the actual... I very much appreciated and enjoyed working with them previously, and I would like to thank them for their service to our country. But I will not be inviting them to join my administration. It's like, peace, fuckers. You're out. And that was about Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo. Then there's Pence, who declined to endorse his former running mate after his own failed presidential bid. The conservative former vice president initially said he was very encouraged by Trump's initial cabinet picks, only to later attack Kennedy, who has expressed disparate views on abortion as deeply concerning to millions of pro-life Americans who have supported the Republican Party and our nominees for decades. But the opinions of Haley and Pence, and those of the more staunchly anti-Trump Republicans who have criticized his cabinet picks as bad for national security or simply unqualified for their prospective posts, aren't exactly widely regarded within the MAGA movement. They aren't widely regarded in the country at all. Democrats don't respect them, and Republicans don't want anything to do with them. So, like, they're basically screaming into a corner and hoping that the echo hits somebody. Who cares what Mike Pence thinks, said Mike Davis, the former Senate GOP aide and Trump's most outspoken legal defender. Pence's team did not respond to a request for comment, while Haley's team declined to comment. And it remains unclear whether Trump's critics will leverage what minimal political capital and money they have through their advocacy groups and super PACs, such as Pence's Advancing American Freedom, to oppose any of his nominees that they deem problematic. Instead, many across the spectrum of Trump skeptics are looking to Congress to continue to hold a line against his more controversial maneuvers, and they are seeing signs for hope in the Senate's Republican early resistance efforts, selecting John Thune as majority leader over Rick Scott, despite Trump's allies backing the Florida senator and pushing scandal-ridden former Florida Representative Matt Gaetz out of the running for Attorney General before he could come up for a vote. Or Trump could use his nuclear option, recess appointments, to force him through. That is the only way for Trump to be checked. The sort of in-group moderates, the people who are members of the Republican Party, who won't give Trump carte blanche and who will push back against the most damaging things, said Sarah Longwell, an anti-Trump GOP strategist and publisher of The Bulwark. You're going to need people in the Republican Party to not cave completely to Trump. The problem with that is we're not putting up with it anymore. Republicans are not going to tolerate this kind of infighting and bullshit. And Elon Musk has already stated that he will put up the money to fund a primary opponent for anybody that does not get on board with Trump's agenda. And when you also consider the PayPal mafia types and Vivek and others who are in the Trump camp that can help throw money at making those sorts of things happen. Like, at the end of the day, most of these politicians are really just spineless pieces of shit who will do whatever is necessary to remain relevant or in power, or just not to lose their office. Like, they might not have any power or relevance or influence, but as long as they get to stay where they are and they don't lose their spot, they'll do whatever they have to do. They don't have any actual values or principles or true ideals. They are just a bunch of spineless, worthless fucking worms that will do whatever is necessary to not be thrown out on their head. So, like, with that threat looming, we'll see how much any of this actually means. The anti-Trump GOP, moderates, the fucking rhinos. But congressional Republicans may be less willing to buck Trump once he resumes office in January, and the business of vetting his cabinet picks moves out from behind closed doors. Public acts of defiance risk not just Trump's wrath, but primary challenges in 2026. And few GOP senators are positioned to win re-elections without his voters. Meanwhile, the number of Trump's opponents in the upper chamber will again dwindle in the next Congress. And the remaining two Republican senators who voted for his impeachment, Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, will no longer be enough to tank a nomination on their own. It's got to start in Congress, Jeff Duncan, the former Republican lieutenant governor of Georgia, who endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris over Trump, said in an interview. You've got to have serious-minded senators willing to hold the conservative line and filter out as much anger and grievance-filled decision-making as possible. Conservative line. Holding the conservative line would be getting behind whatever Donald Trump and his selections want to do. Pushing a progressive Democrat agenda is what Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and the other moderates. They're not moderates. They're fucking leftists. They are the reason that Republicans have been losing for 40 fucking years. Even on the rare occasion when the Republicans have gotten wins, they've lost because all of these, moderate Republicans who just wanted to go along to get along and thought that, the left was playing the same game that was playing fairly and would also like make compromises and stuff. They're the reason we are in the position that we are in today. And that's what Republicans have seen. And that's why these motherfuckers have got to fucking go. Either get on board or get the fuck out. That's where we are. If that bulwark crumbles, so too might the last vestiges of the broader Trump resistance. Asked where Never Trumpers go from here, Jeff Timmer, former executive director of the Michigan GOP and member of the Lincoln Project, told Politico, "You mean re-education camps? I'm being an optimist. Yes, re-education camps is where these motherfuckers need to go." The fact that he's a former executive director of the Michigan GOP and a member of the Lincoln Project tells you everything you need to know. He's a fucking Democrat. They're all fucking Democrats. They're all a bunch of progressive bitches running around pretending to be conservatives, pretending to be Republicans. Now, pretending to be Republicans, they're not conservative at all. The Never Trumpers on the right are getting what they deserve. And the ones on the left who that's the only thing that they ever had to run on was being anti-Trump because they didn't have an actual platform outside of that, they're reeling and losing ground as well. Interesting times, fun times. I'm fucking here for all of it. It's exciting times, really. So stay tuned for after the first of the year. I will actually once the Trump nominees start to get once they start doing the whole congressional vetting and approvals and everything else, and once we start to see who's actually going to end up taking most of these roles, then what I did when Biden got elected was I went through his cabinet and I went through most of the picks and talked about them individually, what I saw good about them, what I saw bad about them, kind of gave analyses of them in those positions. I was wrong on a few of them and I was right on a lot of them. I didn't have any particularly negative thoughts on Merrick Garland at the time. So I thought he was just kind of a ho-hum, okay, like he's the pick. And then he ends up, weaponizing the justice system against Trump for the next 4 years. I didn't see that coming. I guess I should have, considering, Garland got snubbed for a Supreme Court seat. So might have made sense that he might be coming after some vengeance. I didn't think he had a set of balls on him to do that, but turned out he did, or at least he was willing to take orders from people who wanted him to do that. So, but yeah, whenever we get into confirmation season, I will go through the different members of Trump's cabinet and talk about all of them and what I think is good and bad about them. Or you can go and listen to me and Don very quickly kind of giving our thoughts on all of the cabinet as a whole the other night. That was on the last Ways of the World with Don. So yeah, check all that stuff out. I mean, it's a lot of cool stuff to talk about. For the next episode that I'll be doing for next week, it will actually have 2 parts to it. So there will be a regular episode as well as a daily that goes along with it. And I'll release both of them relatively at the same time. But it'll be talking about college and the downturn of enrollment and people kind of thinking more negatively of college. And then so that'll be the regular episode, and then the daily that I'll do live that'll come out after that is a alternative view on that, saying that college is actually still worth it. So we'll look at both of those, but that'll be next week. In the meantime, be sure to tune in for all the daily stuff every day. I'm also still doing, peddling fiction twice every Tuesday and Friday with Johnny, and then I do the morning show the morning after on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7:30 Central AM. So tune in for all that stuff, talking about a lot of stuff and trying to cover everything. I've kind of found some reinvigoration to talk about shit and cover a lot of stuff and get content out. So, there was a time about 4 or 5 months ago that I was actually considering ending this at the end of the year and not doing this anymore. And, say, call it a good run and move on. And then, started getting more sleep, started just getting like more interested in talking about stuff. And it doesn't hurt that I've also had people tell me that they appreciate the stuff that I do. And like, feedback is great. If you follow podcasters, you follow people, content creators and stuff online, reach out and say something. Just be like, hey, I like what you do. Like, that's literally it. Just like, this shit gets depressing sometimes when you post stuff and you don't know if anybody actually sees it. You don't know if anybody gives a fuck. You like feel like you're the one that's standing, feel like you are Nikki Haley yourself, screaming into the corner and hoping the echo hits somebody. Like that's how we feel most of the time. And just reach out and say, hey, like, I appreciate your shit. Just once in a while. That's all we ask. All right. Not begging or anything. Gosh, now it became pathetic. Better end this before I start actually begging. Anyway, have a great rest of your day. Great rest of your week. Be sure to tune in for all the other live stuff. And I will catch you next week. Later.
Before you go, make sure you check out our great sponsor, Agorist Acres. Now, AgoristAcres.com, you can find over 100 varieties of seeds. They've got vegetables, flowers, all kinds of stuff. They've got heritage brands, everything that you want to start any kind of garden that you need. It's free shipping on any order of $20 or more. They've got cool packaging, and most of the seeds come in a fancy glass vial, no paper envelopes. They accept US dollars and crypto and can easily take either at checkout. Now be sure to head over to agoristacres.com, and anything that you get, use the promo code FCT at checkout for 10% off your order. I say all the time that you need to be starting your own garden, you need to be growing your own food, you need to be getting off the grid and becoming less dependent on grocery stores and stuff like that. Agorist Acres is a great first start. They have got everything you need for whatever kind of garden you want. Great people, great product, highly recommend. So go check them out.